Welcome back to my video series about how to build a sub 250 gram 3-inch freestyle drone for absolute beginners who have never built a drone before. This is a video series, so if this is the video you were looking for, then great. But if you just stumbled across this video, then feel free to watch it. But if it feels like you're coming in the middle, that's why. There is a playlist linked in the video description below that has all the videos in this series. And if you're not sure what the heck's going on here, then you should go back to video number 1 and hopefully it'll all make sense. A whole bunch of the content in the video that you're about to watch is borrowed from my previous build series where I built a 5-inch drone. I just couldn't bear to re-record hours and hours of content that was going to be exactly the same, except instead of me holding a 5-inch drone in my hand, I'd be holding a 3-inch drone. I'm going back through these videos, and anytime there is a content that is unique to the 3-inch drone that you're building right now, I'm going to record that and I'm going to edit it in. But if there's a whole bunch of this video where I'm talking and I'm holding a 5-inch drone instead of a 3-inch, don't let it confuse you. It still applies to what you're doing. The next thing to do in setting up the quadcopter is to set up the auxiliary modes, also known as aux modes. And essentially what aux modes are is when you flip a switch on the controller to indicate to the quadcopter you want to do something, like you want to arm the quadcopter so you can fly it, and you have to flip a switch for that. You want to make the quadcopter beep so that if it's lost in the bushes somewhere, you can find it. You pull a switch or press a button on your controller for that. If you want to put the quadcopter into auto level mode, or you want to activate GPS return to home, you're going to flip a switch. All of those things are tied to aux modes. And I want you to think of setting up aux modes as having 2 steps. First, you're going to set up the controller so that the controller maps one of the switches to a certain channel. What's a channel? The communication between the controller and the receiver and the flight controller is divided into channels. And you can see here in the receiver tab all of the individual channels. One of the channels is for the throttle input. One of the channels is for the yaw input. And then there are all these other channels for the auxiliary functions. And with Express ELRS, we actually only have 4 aux channels. Why are there more of them here? That's not important. But we only have 4 usable aux channels, aux 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we're going to have 4 different switches that we can set up to do various different functions. So the first step is to tell the controller when I move this switch or when I press this switch, whatever control that I'm moving, here is the aux channel that it should relate to. And when that switch moves, that aux channel will move and the flight controller will see the aux channel moving. That's the first step. So let's go through that step. Here on the radio, I'm going to press the model key. And then I'm going to press page to go to the mixes screen. And the mixes screen is where you are going to create the relationship between the physical control, the switch or button or knob, and the aux channel that switch manipulates. Now you can see that channels 1 through 4 are already assigned to our 4 main control inputs, and we're going to leave that alone. Depending on your radio setup, you may also see things set up for channels 5, 6, 7, and 8. If you're using the Radiomaster Boxer as it was delivered to you by Radiomaster with one of their pre-configured models, they may have already mapped some switches for you, and that's okay. But if, like me, at the beginning of this process, you created a brand new fresh model, then you don't have anything on those channels. Either way, I want you to go through what I'm about to show you just so your radio is set up exactly like mine. So if you do have things on channels 5, 6, 7, and 8, then I'm going to suggest you highlight it, long press, and delete. Only do this if you're working on a model specifically for this build. Like if you actually have a quadcopter you've set up previously and you have like stuff there, make a new model. Start from scratch. Don't mess up an existing one. But if you're just working on the default model, let's just get on the same page. So I want you to delete those until channels 5, 6, 7, and 8 are completely blank. And before we assign these channels, we need to ask ourselves what switches are we going to use for what functions? Because here's the thing, this radio has way more switches and knobs than we have available aux channels. We have 4 aux channels. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 switches. We have 2 knobs. We have 1, 2 buttons at the top. We're not going to be able to use all of those. Well, there are complicated ways you can program radios to sort of combine switches and stuff, but we won't be getting into that today. Today, we're going to map 1 switch to 1 channel. So we got to think about which of these switches we're going to use. And what I like to do is I like to think about the functions that I'm going to want to set up and then think about which switches I'm going to assign to those functions. So the very first function I'm going to set up is the arming function, which basically tells the quadcopter, start the motors, I am about to begin flying you. And when the quad is disarmed, it won't spin the motors, and that's just a safety precaution. Kind of like putting the ignition in the car and turning the engine, although this is a battery, not a gas engine. You don't actually start it like that. And what I like to do is use the 2-position switch here on the face of the radio to arm. Now, some people would argue that this big shoulder switch here is better for arming because your hand kind of rests here, and that's debatable. If you really like that, you can set it up that way. This is completely personalizable. But personally, I find that having to pull in and press to disarm means that I often like jerk the throttle a little bit. I've noticed sometimes if I have a radio set up like that, I'll be holding the switch stick like this, and when I go to disarm, it kind of makes me jerk the throttle, and I don't like that. So I like to put the arming switch here on the front of the radio, which is totally easy to flip, just really easy to flip without messing anything up. Now, the next thing I want to point out to you is that the numbering for the aux channels is a little bit confusing. Notice that the radio says we have here channels 1, 2, 3, and 4, which are our main control channels, and then channels 5, 6, 7, and 8. But in Betaflight, it has channels roll, pitch, yaw, and throttle, and then aux 1, aux 2, and so on. Aux 1 is channel 5. It's the first aux channel. A lot of times it can be confusing because you'll say channel 5 and people will hear aux 5 and then they'll get off. So don't let that happen. There is a rule in Express ELRS that the arming switch has to be on channel 5, aux 1, and the arm position has to be high and the disarm position has to be low. So we must assign our arming switch to channel 5. We're going to go down to channel 5. We're going to click the jog wheel one time. That'll create a new mix. We're going to go down to source. We're going to click the jog wheel one time, and the source will begin blinking. The source is the physical control that is going to be used to manipulate this channel. And what I'm going to do is, while source is blinking, I'm just going to move this switch that I want to use to do the arming function. And when I do that, you'll see that that just fills in whichever switch I just moved. And then if I click the jog wheel one more time, that is preserved. That is all you need to do. And now what you should see is that when I flip the arm switch, or when I flip that switch, channel aux 1, channel 5, same thing, goes up and down between 1000 and 2000. Now we can tell the flight controller what position that switch is in. The next step is to tell the flight controller what that frickin' means. One of those is going to be armed and one's going to be disarmed. And the way we're going to do that is to go to the Modes tab. And in the Modes tab, we're going to, first of all, we're going to disable hide unused modes because we want to see all the modes while we're setting up. And we're going to go to the arm mode and we're going to click add range. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to flip that switch. And I want you to watch what happens here in this pull down menu when I flip that switch. Notice that when I flip that switch, whichever aux channel I moved is automatically filled in there. We can manually select the aux channel if we know which aux channel we want to use to control this mode, but we can also just set it to auto and flip it. So now that that is set up, what you should see is that when I move the switch, this little yellow tick mark moves back and forth, indicating the switch position. And the next thing we need to do is tell the flight controller what position is going to be armed and what position is going to be disarmed. And the way we do that is by moving this yellow range. I call it a range. Whenever this yellow tick mark is inside this range, then this mode will become active. And the simplest thing to do is to put that switch into the arm position. Well, which position is the arm position? It turns out that with Express ELRS, we don't have a choice about that because the arm has to be high. So we must move this up here. And we're going to hit save. And now we see the mode turns red, indicating that the flight controller realizes that we should be armed. This mode should be active, but there's a reason that it's not allowed to do that. And the reason is that the flight controller will refuse to arm whenever USB is plugged in, because it's like, hey, you're programming me. You're clearly not wanting to fly, and it'll for safety reasons. So now we've got it set up where if the switch is down, we are armed. If the switch is up, we are disarmed. I actually hate that. Lots of people like it that way. And the reason they like it that way is there's a convention in the RC hobby that the default position for all your switches is pushed away. And so people will, before they power up their controller, they'll just kind of go, their switches are all in who knows what position, they'll just kind of go and push all their switches away. And then they know that that is their neutral default position. When they power up their multi-rotor or their aircraft, everything is going to be whatever the default position is in their sort of setup. But frankly, I like to push away to arm and pull towards to disarm. I don't know why. I'm not going to try and justify that decision. I've always done it that way. If you want to, you can do that as well. And I'm going to show it to you because some people say, Express LRS forces me to have the switch be a certain way. I have to have the switch be down to arm and up to disarm. Express LRS, how dare you? This is a fully programmable radio. It can do whatever you want. So what we can do is we can go back to this mix. I've actually still got it loaded up here in the mixes. This is the mix for channel 5. What we can do is we can change the weight from 100, and I'm going to just roll that down to minus 100. What that's going to do by putting minus 100 for the weight instead of 100 is it's going to invert the channel. So now the switch position being down is disarmed and the switch position being up is armed. You can do whatever you want. It's up to you. All right, I'm going to save that. Before we continue with the video, I'd like to remind you that the single best way for you to help make sure that I am able to continue making content like this, which hopefully you value, is to join my Patreon. Patreon is a website where you subscribe to me for as little as $2 a month. That's the minimum amount, just $2 a month. Someone's vacuuming. But join my Patreon, get access to my Discord server, and just feel good about supporting the work that I do here. If you watch my content regularly, then hopefully eventually you'll come to a point where you go, this guy's earned my support. If today is that day, join my Patreon at any level, at any dollar value that you pick. $2, pick $5, pick $10, pick whatever amount you think is fair for the amount of value you get out of my content. There's a link down below where you can click through. And if today's not the day, if you're like, I just want to watch the video, you've probably already skipped ahead. But yeah, keep watching the content. I'll keep making the content, and I hope that day comes. Now you can see here in the Modes tab that there are a lot of different aux modes that you could set up. We're not going to go through all of them. I actually have a video I did once a little while back where I went through every single one of these modes and explained what they are and what they do. It is a super long and boring video that it still has a lot of views. Apparently a lot of you people like that stuff. I'll put a link to that in the video description if you'd like to bore yourself to sleep someday. But for the most part, I think we should focus on the main modes that I set up on all of my quadcopters and the ones I think you should start off with. And the next one we're going to set up is angle mode. Angle mode means that the aircraft will auto level. When you center the stick, it'll level back out again. A lot of beginners like to start flying in angle mode, although you can't do flips and rolls. So if you're going to be doing serious racing or freestyle, you're going to be you're not going to be in angle mode, but it's good to start off that way. And what I like to do is have angle mode be on a 3-position switch. And I like that switch to be on my right hand because the arm switch is on my left hand. And then the other, I'd just like to have my other hand doing the angle mode. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this 3-position switch. It's switch SC on top of the radio. And the first thing I need to do is set up a mix. So here in the mixes screen, I'm going to go down to channel 6. Doesn't matter which channel we use at this point. Only channel 5 is special for Express LRS with the arming mode. In channel 6, we're going to go down to the source. We're going to click the jog wheel one time, and then I'm going to move switch SC, just move it at all, and switch SC will get picked up here. And when I do that, we can also see in the receiver tab that when I move switch SC, now channel aux2 is moving to 3 positions. It's a 3-position switch, so we have 3 positions that the channel will be in. We'll go back to the Modes tab. I'm going to take angle mode. I'm going to hit add range. While this is set to auto, I'm just going to move switch SC, and it's going to pick up aux2 as the aux mode or the switch that's controlling this. And then I'm going to put that in the middle position. Oh, look, this range is already in the middle position. I'm just going to hit save. When that switch is in the middle position, we'll be in angle mode. When it's in the up position, we will be in acro mode for doing flips and rolls and freestyle and racing. If you wanted to, you could decide that you want angle mode to be your default. And I said that most people will pull all their switches upwards in order at the beginning of turning their radio on. So what you would do is you would put switch SC in the up position, and you would move this over here, and now the up position would be angle mode. And then you would sort of start up with the switch in angle mode, and then the middle position could be acro mode for you. It's totally up to you. Personally, I like acro mode to be the default, so I'm going to put it like this so that the default is to have angle off, middle position is to have angle on. While we're here, what about the down position? What about that third position? I like to use that for turtle mode, and let's go ahead and set that up as well. What turtle mode refers to is if you crash and the quadcopter is upside down, if you can activate turtle mode, and it'll flip the quadcopter back right side up again. Confusingly, Betaflight calls turtle mode flip over after crash. I guess that's the official name, but everyone calls it turtle mode. So we'll hit add range here. Once again, we will move switch SC, and we'll see that aux2 gets picked up here. We're going to put that switch in the down position, and we're going to drag this over. By the way, I need to show you this. You can change the size of this. I'm just dragging it around because, like, if you wanted to have something like this where both the middle and the down position activated a mode, for some reason, you totally could do that, but I'm not. And now if we scroll up to the top and we hide unused modes, you can see what we've got so far. Angle mode, flip crash mode. This is going to be acro mode. There is no separate acro mode. It's just when you don't have angle mode, you're in acro mode. And we've got an arm disarm switch. We're well on our way. There's one more thing I want you to set up. So go ahead and disable hide unused modes. And that is going to be a beeper. It's very good to have a beeper on your aircraft. You can have a dedicated beeper that has it's just a really loud buzzer and it goes beep, 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 beep. But we don't have one of those on this because a little extra money, there's not really room for it. Instead, the aircraft can beep the motors. Like when you plug in a battery and it goes doo-doo-doo, it can just beep them. That's the motors beeping, actually, if you didn't know that. So what I like to use for beeper is this momentary switch right here. So I can just press it, beep, 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 as I'm looking for my quadcopter when it crashes and I can't find it. So I'm going to go down to channel 7. Again, it doesn't matter. It's just the next blank channel. We're going to go to source, click one time so it's flashing. We're going to press this momentary switch on the shoulder. It's going to pick that up as switch SF. That's it. We're going to back out, and we're going to find the beeper mode. Here's the beeper mode. We're going to hit add range. We're going to press that button one time. It will pick up that aux3 is the one that we moved. And then what I want you to do is hold that button down, look at where this tick mark is. That's the switch position that's going to activate this mode, and drag this over to cover it and press save. When we press that button, the beeper will activate. We need the battery plugged in. That's why you're not hearing the beeper right now. And if I hide unused modes, this is what your screen should look like at this time. So to recap, in order to set up your aux modes, first assign a switch to an aux channel in the radio's mixer screen. Then go to the modes channel, add a new range for the aux mode in question, move the control to have it pick up which aux channel is going to control that mode, and then drag the yellow slider into a position that corresponds to the switch position that activates the mode. That's going to do it for this video. I will see you in the next one. There is a full playlist down in the video description if you want to see all of the content in this series. As well, I'll put a card on screen if the platform that you're watching on shows you cards. I'll see you in the next one.